Well, hello and welcome to another episode of RadCast Outdoors. I'm Patrick Edwards and I'm your host today. David's out on the trail doing all kinds of shows, showing off the bow spider to everybody around the North America. It feels like he's been on the road quite a bit. I think he's done 3 shows in the last week and a half. So you'll have to excuse David today, but I have a special guest on and I get a lot of questions. And I think a lot of the questions surround the fact that PK Lures is a sponsor of the podcast. And I have a fairly long history with PK, and so does my guest. And my guest has probably been, I would say, one of the most successful anglers with PKs since they went big, and even before that. And so we're going to talk about that. So those of you who send me questions a lot about how do I catch this kind of species or that kind of species, or how do I target really big walleye with PKs? I have the perfect guest to answer some of those questions for us today. So just want to introduce Tim Geni. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Patrick. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. And you're up in Saskatchewan, which is one of the best places in the entire world to catch big walleyes, especially. And so I want you to just do kind of a quick introduction for everybody about who you are, where you're from, and we'll go from there.
Well, like you alluded to, I'm in Saskatchewan, Canada, probably one of the pristine provinces, in my humble opinion, where big fish swim, and there's not a lot of people in the province. We've only got I think 4 million, and we're pretty large, and we've got, the number of lakes and streams and ponds and ditches that you can catch a fish in are second to none. There's a lot of good quality lakes and rivers and whatnot that produce some really record-breaking type of fish. And we've got it here in Saskatchewan. I've been fishing these lakes and rivers and whatnot for about 50 years now, and it's been really good. People talk about how good it is in other parts of the country, even the States as well. But I think we're second to none. We stay right up there in some of the, the go-to spots where people talk about, bucket list. Well, Saskatchewan got a lot of them, and quite frankly, I think probably some of the best. So that's where I'm originating out of. I'm born and raised in Saskatchewan, and don't really plan on leaving unless my son moves away to Uktuk, and I gotta follow with the wife and the family.
So. Well, and a lot of people don't know this, but you once held the world record for the catch and release walleye through the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame, I believe, wasn't it?
That's right. That took place quite a few moons ago, back in 2011. Pat O'Grady, the founder of PK Lures, came up and started fishing. We did actually a show, and the video is on YouTube. You can still find it out there where you can see me catch that record-breaking fish. And we actually didn't go out to say we're going to catch a world record walleye. Just a bunch of friends went out. Pat showed up, and we did a TV show with him. And it was the first time basically people heard of and even knew about PK Lures. It was kind of just, a few months into it, and I suggested to Pat because they wanted to do something special, and I said, "Why don't you come to Canada? This is world renowned for some really big fish, even Lakers, other species, but walleye wise." And it didn't take but one call and one conversation and a little twist of an arm, and they were coming up to fish. So brought up a few of his buddies and a camera, and we started recording. And by George, if I didn't lock into a phenomenal fish, that the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame goes by length. It's measured, released, and it's got to be live release. So I held the Division 4 live release walleye. There was a bigger walleye caught in Saskatchewan, and it is the world record. Still stands as the ice world record, and that was a priest up in Nipawin caught that fish, which again is one of the waters that I fish a lot, and I've taken some really big fish out of there as well. So he's got that category was held by him as well, and but that was kept, and this is a live release record, and it's since been broken. I just actually got a call from a fellow in the States talking about it, and it goes by length, and mine was just shy of 34 inches, and now the record's live release is just over 34 inches. So still proud of it. Any record that you hold, is something to behold, and happy that I held it for even a few years. So.
Yeah. So people, if you're wondering if he's qualified to talk about big fish, I'd say for walleyes, especially, yes, you are qualified.
Yeah.
I've never caught a walleye even close to that. I think my biggest is just over 31 inches. So to catch something that big, that's a hog in any body of water,
Yeah.
but
That's not my biggest.
it's not your biggest. So what's your biggest?
My biggest walleye in actually a tournament, the Vanity Cup up in Nipawin, Saskatchewan, which is a pristine tournament as well. I had, and it held for the longest time. We did some investigating on it because it's not really a recorded record, but the word of mouth. We talked to some of the big guys that in fishermen, and they said, yeah, that's the biggest one that we know of caught in a professional tournament. And it was 15 pounds, 12 ounces was that record at that time. And I caught the fish, and me and my partner, Dan Dolinsky, ended up winning the tournament. So that fish was just over 34 inches. So yeah, it was a behemoth. And again, that's on video too, if you want to go to YouTube and play around and look for it. It was live released, of course, and that was something to behold. But I've got 9 walleye over 14 pounds myself personally, and I don't even want to guess how many I've got over 10 pounds, because it would be almost ridiculous. Again, we've got the waters here that produce them, and I think we're going to touch on that a little bit. But yeah, pretty proud of that fish as well.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And just, I mean, kind of like the milestone for a lot of walleye guys is to catch a fish over 10 pounds. That's kind of like the benchmark, that everybody has, right. Or a fish over 30 inches. Because typically with the formula, if you're at 30 inches, you're close to 10 pounds, right around 10 pounds. Yeah. It starts to get more exponential as you go up. Because like I know the Wyoming state record was just over 17 pounds, and it was about a 34-inch fish, but it was really girthy, had right. a lot of mass to it.
Right.
But yeah, I do want to touch on walleye, because I get a lot of questions about that. Walleye angling and in the, kind of Western United States has really grown over the last 30 years. Wyoming is typically known for trout. So is Colorado and Montana. We have amazing trout fishing, and we always have, big lake trout, brown trout, rainbow trout, those kind of things. But now there's a pretty good chunk of lakes that have big walleyes too. Right. And so, I get a lot of questions from guys like, you talk about the PK spoon, you talk about the flutter fish, you talk about this new rattle spoon. Mm-hmm. Do they actually work? Do they catch fish? And I'm just like, yeah, I mean, they really do. And you're out there using them more than just about anybody that I know, right. Especially targeting the species of walleye. So I wanted to kind of start with just starting with PKs, right. What's kind of your go-to on a daily basis when you're going out to hit the water? What do you have in your kit that you're taking to pursue walleye on any given day?
Right. Well, normally what we like to do is you start off with a react. All of our PK lures are a little bit different. When you go to a tackle store and start looking at different products on the wall, you're going to see spoons, you're going to see crankbaits, you're going to see various different lures that you're going to use to catch these fish. But PK always seems to step outside that boundary. Like we've always said, catching fish redefined. If you know Pat O'Grady, when he invented the flutter fish and the PK spoon, and then since then we've just been tweaking it and adding this and taking this away. And then Kurt Reef now owns the company, and Kurt's just an ambassador for the sport, where he wants to make it that much better for anglers to catch bigger and better fish. And it's proven. I mean, we've had so many stories of guys coming out and saying that my personal best, biggest I've ever caught, most I've ever caught. With PK, it's designed differently than your average spoon, and I believe it triggers fish when others won't, and that's been the case. And Kurt's taken it on to a level where if there's something out there that needs to be tweaked, whether it's you just him and Pat got the spin jig invented, and then the new rattle spoon invented, and now the new ridge rattler, with rattles in it that are superior to any other out there that I've been using. And he tweaks it, and I think that really moves it up to the next level of a lure that you should want to have in your tackle box. When I've been out with guys and they're not catching fish, and I'm just absolutely pounding the fish. And what are you using? Here you go. We've got such a large array of sizes and colors too. I don't even know how many SKUs we have. We've got quite a few. I'm going to guess in the 400 plus mark. And we've gone into the, the summer stuff as well. But for winter time, we've got some superior product that guys are just, you hear Wonder Bread spoon. Well, that's been the PK go-to. The new Ridge Rattler's another go-to now. It just keeps getting better and better. And until you try them, most guys, I got this, I got that. Give it, take a few bucks out of the pocket and give it a shot, because I'll tell you, you will be impressed, and you will see why it catches fish. And a lot of times fish get accustomed to stuff, and they don't tweak on it as much as they they would every day, seeing the same lure down there that everybody's presenting to them. Some lakes and rivers have their own little idiosyncrasies where that's what you got to use, but it never hurts to try something different. And I'm all about trying something different, and PK makes it so that you can try something different, because there's so many colors and so many designs and different options for everyday anglers.
Yeah, especially this time of year when you're ice fishing. Yeah. How do you set up and typically start? Because I know every angler has their go-to. Mine personally is the flutterfish. It's just because that's what I started with and that's what I love, and I've caught lots of fish on it. So I go to my confidence bait. But what's your kind of confidence baits in order, and kind of based on what you see from the fish, what progression do you go through?
Right. I usually start off with a rattle spoon, like the new PK rattle spoon. In the past, we just had the PK spoon without a rattle, and that would be your go-to start one. And I'll go between those two quite often. And again, it's basically the sound, vibration, noise. The PK rattle spoon has a little blade on the top, a little willow blade, and it seems to trigger the fish as well. It's almost like a 3D, and the bait is designed with most of the weight on the bottom half of it. So when you jig it up and down, like a normal spoon will just kind of flutter off to the side. This one kind of up and down is a little more erratic, and pendulums out and then slides back, and those fish seem to react to that. Again, triggering something a little bit different that the fish haven't seen before, because it's just, monotonous. They say, oh, there's the jigging a minnow, which works. Don't get me wrong. We've got a PK jig that we work with, jigging a minnow, but I like to go after them fairly aggressively. And then if I see that, my fish finder, whatever you're using, number one, have one. I don't care what you're using, but you've got to own one to know if the fish are there and how they're going to react to your bait. I use a Vexlar 30, great unit. A lot of guys use the live scope now and different styles of that. But the key is to have something down there so you can see what those fish are doing, and if there's actually fish there, because they'll come in, and if you're spooking the fish away and they won't react, then I start to change. And then I'll go down to I'll even downsize. I'll start with a 3/8 and a quarter sometimes. I was out on Sunday and yesterday, and literally down to an 1/8 ounce with a small bait on it, usually a minnow head or a live minnow. In Saskatchewan isn't allowed. We have these dead baits, so we stick with the artificials and a minnow head, frozen minnow head. And don't use too much. You don't want to basically over bait a PK lure, because it takes away from the action that you want. So either circle a small minnow on your treble hook, and or just the head. And sometimes, again, when you catch a fish, we use a fish eye or a piece of gullet or whatever. Again, you can go to PK and Lures, our Facebook page, and we've got umpteen videos and pictures of people using those lures. But I always start out with the rattle, and then I'll go down to the spoon, and then it's not unusual to say why and we have got so many times where those fish come in and they just won't nothing. So then you talk about the flutterfish, and that's a change or two there. They seem to just, and it's a really strange looking lure. It looks like a peanut, and it's got the dimples on it, and it's, each side of each half is identical, so it's got a really cool flutter to it, and fish just it triggers them. And again, now that's my three favorite. And then now we've gone and thrown in this Ridge Rattler. That's taken my heart away, because boy, I'll tell you, we caught a lot of fish on that Ridge Rattler this year too. Again, we had a really strong bite going on the rattle spoon, and it was like they just disappeared. They were there, but they just wouldn't want to commit. So we dropped down that Ridge Rattler and just pounded them. So the fish will I like to say, let the fish tell you what they want. Don't go out there and be a fisherman and say, he's going to bite this, come what, and just let the fish tell you. If you want something bigger, you rip a big half ounce or 3/4 ounce butterfish or a bigger spoon, that can be the ticket. Experiment is key in catching big fish. If you just go out there with one lure and one color, and yeah, you'll catch some fish, but there's those days when you start playing around and changing, you're going to have some massive success.
So for you on the color selection, because I get asked this a lot, because the red dot glow has always been my favorite, but for you, like what are the colors that you always have in your bag? Because like for me, it's like red dot glow, fire tiger glow. I like that Wonder Bread spoon. I was snap jigging that for trout last year, and you talk about some fun. I had a great time catching like 20 to 22 inch rainbows that just come up and about rip the rod out of my hand. But I also like the crawfish color, the pink glow, some of those. So what are your go-to colors that you always have?
I think I'll agree with you on the red dot glow. That's always been, tie one on at least one of your rods and or have it available for yourself. The Wonder Bread's been really, been doing really well lately. Again, it's a white, and it's, kind of like the underside of a fish, the white color. I think they see it, you think about Wonder Bread, it's just a bunch of dots on a lure, but man, it outperforms a lot of times. But then you gotta, again, change and play and let the fish just, show you. On a sunny day, I'll go with the silvers and the gold and the coppers. We got some really deadly colors there. Just just like a spoon, just boom. It's shiny, it flashes. They come in for that look and seal the deal. And then when it's a little bit cloudier or low light, I like all our spoons, and majority, I think, like I'll say 99%, they have a glow pigmentism to them, and that glow really, really is super glow. And you charge that up with I use a Vexler glow ring and or even a flashlight or whatever, and charge that at night and early morning. A lot of guys buy a glow hook and they never put it under a charger. You're defeating the purpose. Discolored water, dark in the morning and evening. I will drop that thing down there and I will start out fishing guys 3 to 1, and they're like, "Oh, you got another one?" "Yeah." "Did you charge?" "No, I forgot." And they're, in there starting to charge their lures too, and then we're all on fish. So that's the key. It's designed for a reason to use it, and that's going to catch you more fish. I guarantee that.
And I'll tell you, if you're focused on trout and burbot, same thing. Like if it's a low light condition and you take those glow lures, you get them charged up and you drop them down with like a piece of sucker meat, a minnow head, something like that. Those lake trout love it. Splake love it. Brown trout love it. I haven't met a fish yet that didn't like it. So, I mean, it is a great way to do it.
Yeah, I agree. And most companies have come out with that. They've got glows onto their lures and whatnot. So that's the reason they do it, because it works. And PK's got some exceptional colors that glow, super glow, and it helps seal the deal.
Yeah, let's just let everybody know, I think you're one of the better walleye anglers in anywhere. And so I wanted to pick your brain specifically on, because I get a lot of questions about this, is like based on the season and where do you catch walleyes? Where should you look for walleyes? And I know it varies. I mean, you have walleyes in rivers, you have walleyes in reservoirs, lakes, ponds, all of the above. But as a general rule throughout this season, if you could kind of take me through like starting at early ice, going all the way through the season, what is your game plan when you're going out and you're looking for where you would find the fish, especially on like lakes, reservoirs, that kind of thing?
Right. I think the number one, and thank you for saying I'm a good angler, but there's so many good guys out there now, the equipment and whatnot, that there's a lot of great anglers out there. Appreciate you giving me the kudos, but I learned from a lot of them too. So, and it can all be taught. And if you take the time out and listen and watch these guys on these YouTube videos and whatnot, man, they could show you a lot. What I could say to that is, number one, like if we wanted to start in spring, and a fellow by the name of Don Lamont years ago used to say, "Find the warmest water, Tim." And I used to fish with him and around, and good guy. And at the end of the day, that's one of the keys is finding shallow water, the warmest water you can find. And a lot of times, like fishing a lake like Lake Diefenbaker, let's say, for instance, the water temperature in the 40s, and we do spring tournaments, and if you can find 50, 52, 54, just even 2 or 3 or 4 degrees warmer, that is going to be lights out. Those fish go back in those big bays, and they go back in areas where the water is going to warm quicker with a darker bottom, and that's where we like to target the fish. And that's always been a key for me. Now, they don't stay there long a lot of times, But when you're looking in the springtime, it's find the warmest water. Even if it could be right where you launch your boat in a back marina. You'd be surprised what would be in those spots. But that's number one. Look for the warmest water that you can possibly find in the spring. Sometimes your boat launch goes in the middle of the lake, and there's no warm water close to it. So you might have to make a drive or a long run to find that warmer water. But at the end of the day, it's going to pay off in dividends. You're going to be able to catch the biggest fish and the most fish, in my opinion. They like the warm water, and that pretty much holds true with the majority of species that I chase. So that'd be number one. And then of course you're looking for walleye. You're looking for any sort of structural difference. If there's rock and rubble and maybe some fresh weeds that have come up, little points, nooks and crannies where they'll push the bait again. So they're going to feed, but they're spawning and they're kind of getting off that phase. But they're looking for something a little bit different. And man, this spring we were catching fish in 3 and 4 feet of water, where shore fishermen could have just held their line out 2 feet from the shoreline and caught these fish. That's how shallow they were. You pitch to the shoreline, pull it off the edge, and boom. And those fish will be in anywhere from 1.5 to 4 feet of water all the time. And then as it warms and starts to get to the point where it's in the 80s and 90s, which I've also caught fish in that shallow stuff in those hot temperatures. But when they hit around that 80-degree mark, they probably boiled right out of there. But there'll be a few fish around. We start to then drop into the secondary drop-offs and start, then you're 10, 12, 14, 18, and then they start moving really fast. And, I fished in the States before PWT years back, and they'd be in back bays, and within 2 days, 3 days, where'd they go? And 10 miles down the lake on reefs. They're a crazy creature. So, but that's probably number one, would be the spring. And then in the summertime, as things start warming up, they start migrating down the shoreline. They're looking for feed. They're getting into their summer patterns, and then you start, in the spring, you're fishing usually historically slip bobbers, light jigs, live bait, some crankbaits and stuff like that. Throwing that sort of stuff. We will do a little bit of that, but mostly it's bobbers and jigs and Lindy rigging. And then as the summer starts to wear on, you're looking for deeper water, not necessarily real deep water, but deeper than that shallow stuff, which is usually weed choked in that. And then we go into the secondary, that you're 10 to 20, and then it's amazing how deep they will go. I don't like targeting fish that deep. Rarely will you ever see me in 30 feet plus. It's just like, unless I drifted out there by accident, I like to target them because a lot of the fish stay in that shallower water and along the shorelines. They'll come up and feed at certain times of the day anyway. Targeting them too deep can be harmful to them as well. So that's the summer kind of process. And again, we start moving a little quicker in the summertime. We're starting to pull, crankbaits. You're starting to pull spinners with PK's got a new wobbler out and a PK disc, and we're starting to pull those on live bait with either artificials or leeches or crawlers. So we start doing that, and just moving a little bit quicker. And then come the fall again, fish are usually a little bit deeper now. They're going to start thinking up and coming into the shallower part of the water column again. And but in the fall, we again start pitching and ripping. The ridge rattle is a really good one for targeting a deeper water fish as well. And jigs, spinners, anything like that. Well, and Lindy rigs. The fall classic was one on Lindy rigs and crankbaits basically. So kind of both. And then the winter time, of course, early winter is my fun time. Everybody likes to hit that early bite, and we again start over with the PK spoons and the ridge rattlers and jigs and whatnot. And yeah, location is key though. You got to do your homework. You got to know where you're going. If you're just going out there helter skelter, it's not going to work. Do a little bit of homework. Contact your tackle shops, and I guarantee if they give you any tips at all, it's probably there's going to be a crowd of guys around, and just stay off the edge of them. I like to fish away back from them. We fished over the years and kind of just on the edge of where everybody else seems to be can be critical, because those fish do get pushed off, and then you can reap the benefits from that because they like to, big fish are smart. They don't get big for being caught every day. They know what they're doing. So So that kind of, I guess, in a nutshell, is what you can do. But again, to catch those quality big fish, you got to have the body of water to catch them. I mean, you can, doesn't matter what walleye swim in different lakes, big lakes, small lakes, medium lakes. I've got some monster fish in sloughs, basically. And you went, how did that fish get that big? Because nobody targeted them, nobody caught them. Like, they can be there, but we got Diefenbaker, Last Mountain Lake, Nipawin, the river systems. We got some great rivers too, and they get big because nobody's out there. A lot of places where you're from, there's a lot of people, and they get caught pretty regular and taken home and eaten, most of them. So that's why I'm lucky enough to be in a province like this, that I can target big fish, because that's one of the keys is finding the body of water that holds those big fish. You can go out to a little reservoir, and the biggest fish in it is, I fish on one of the systems there quite often because they have a cabin there. And if we get a 4-pound fish, we're lucky. But in the same breath, we get numbers. You just won't get big. They just do not grow. You need the forage, you need, the temperature, everything's got to be just perfect to get those big monsters.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, as far as when you're out there and you're, trying to catch something to eat. What are you typically looking for as far as a keeper walleye versus something you're going to put back?
Yeah, I like to keep, again on the day, but yeah, 15, 16, 17, 18, they're just like, they're candy, right? And, if you're going out quite often, take your limit if you want. If you got fish in the fridge, don't, make sure that you're, kind of conserve that end of it. But, historically, I'll catch my 2, 3, 4 walleye, whatever I catch, and bring home, and I eat them that night. There's nothing better than fresh fish. You don't want to leave them in the fridge over the winter and then try and eat them in summertime. Just consume what you have and eat them quickly. And that 18, if you wanted to pick the perfect size, would be like 18 inches. Anything in that 20 and 21 too, they start, I consider that almost like most of them are males, not all of them, but that's your spawning breeds. And then when you're getting anything over, like most of like Tobin, for instance, Tobin Lake, it's protected. You can't keep anything over 55, and it's got to be, it's got to be over 86 centimeters before you can even keep a walleye. Well, that's 34 inches. And the reason they got that 86 in there is because the world record's going to come out of there. And if somebody does catch it and he has the inkling, I personally would release it. I take the pictures and release it and let somebody else catch it. But, at least you have a shot if you do catch that 17, 18 pound fish, that you can take it home if you wished. But I'd say release them all. Anything in that 18 to 19, 20 inches is eaters, and the rest go back.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. And like you said, the ones that taste the best are 15 to 18, 19 inches. Yep. After that, those are your primary breeders. So put those back. Yep. I saw a study a few years ago, and it was looking at which female walleyes are the best, for spawning and having success. And they found something like it was like the 19 to 22 inch, 23 inch was like the best spawners. And that, as they get older, they don't spawn as well. But I think, to your point, like having those bigger fish in the water is great, especially for kids that want to come and fish or whatever.
Yeah. We've got there's a Saskatchewan Research Center here we actually work with them, the Saskatchewan Walleye Trail. And we work closely with fisheries there, and talked to Chris Summers before. And he said, it doesn't matter, any size female will produce some eggs. And so even a guy says, 10 pounder, you might as well kill it, it's not going to reproduce. No, they reproduce. Maybe they won't have the 1.2 million eggs or whatever that a 5 or 6 pound walleye might have, but even if they had a few 100,000, that's still a lot of eggs, and those fish need to be respected and released back into the water so that our kids can catch that record fish that I caught years back and continue to catch. So release anything that's of any size at all, in my humble opinion. But I think, and it's changed a lot from back in the day when we used to go out, and I've been around a few years, and the trick was get your 5 fish, and you were throwing back the 3 pounders and trying to keep a 4 and a 5, but not anymore. It's all changed. people's educations have changed, and we have to. Otherwise, we're not going to have any fish left there. Some of the provinces have struggled over the last little while. They're getting a little better. There used to be, and I think there still is some tagging systems where you basically literally get, like drawing a tag for a white-tailed deer or a mule deer or whatever in some of these provinces. Yeah, they're such that they'll do that for walleye, and that I don't want to ever see that in Saskatchewan. I think our fishery is in great shape, but we've got to respect it and look after it too.
Yeah, I'm kind of, I'm with you on that. I think that Wyoming's kind of a little bit more liberal in how the bag limits are set. Like most places in Wyoming, you can catch 6 walleye of any size. There's a couple of exceptions, but that's basically the rule. But that also is because most of the places that we have, walleyes, kind of like Boysen Reservoir near me, it's a trout fishery and that's what they want to manage it for. So the walleye are kind of like a second thought, even though the walleye are what people are coming to Boysen to catch. Like they haven't stocked walleye in Boysen since the 70s, but they're self-sustaining, right? And so
yeah,
it is pretty important on a body of water like that to let the big ones go, because it's not getting stocked this year or next year or any year to come, because they're trying to manage it for trout. Whereas like Glendale Reservoir, closer to where Pat lives, they're putting hundreds of thousands of walleye in there, and they have a slot limit there. So they're trying to manage that specific body of water for that species, which makes sense. I mean, it all makes sense when you think about it. But for walleyes specifically, I think it's interesting because, you talk about how many eggs they can produce and just how many fish you can get out of them. Do you, in Canada, in Saskatchewan specifically, is there a pretty good management plan? Like, do you guys have walleye fish, hatcheries and different things like that, and trying to maintain populations and do stocking efforts?
Oh yeah, for sure. We have probably one of the best, better than most provinces. And I've been in there quite a few times, and a few of my friends work there, and they do all species though, but they pretty much target and look at the walleye. They have spawning camps, and they I don't know how the numbers are staggering, how many eggs and whatnot that are fertilized and returned back to the resource center there, where they make them into little fry and whatnot, and then eventually release them back into the system. And every lake that they do this flying, and right now they're using Buffalo Pound, they use Diefenbaker, and they'll pull those eggs out of the females and that, and then they'll turn around, and how many they take out, they restock that lake again with so many, like a percentage of those fry back into the system. So they're never, there's some talk, oh, you're hurting and harming the fish. No, they're making it that much better. But yeah, it's really good. We've got a good mix, and working with a lot of the, with the Saskatchewan Walleye Trail, we work hand in hand with fisheries, and we're a voice to them. And we want to sustain this fishery for our kids and their kids' kids. Like it, otherwise, yeah, it will end. And we've seen it happen before on some lakes that get fished right out, and then they've got to put complete, blockages on and no limits, or like one type of thing. But no, we work hand in hand with basically the Saskatchewan government, and it's been working well. So happy to do it too.
So if a guy wanted to go out and catch, or guy or gal wants to go out and catch the biggest walleye of their life, what time of year would you suggest that they go and try to accomplish this? Because I hear a debate between walleye anglers on this. Some will say spring, some say fall. Those are the two main ones I hear, because they're usually a little bit more accessible to the angler. But what in your opinion is the best time of year to catch a monster?
Yeah, the spring, is numbers you're going to catch, and you're going to catch big fish too. But they're already, they're done laying their eggs. We've got protected dates that we can't fish, and that's when they're spawning. So they've already laid all their eggs, and I've caught 31-inch walleye, 32-inch walleye, and they barely scratch 10, 11 pounds. But that same fish catching that 32 in the fall, when she's fattening up there, now you're talking, or even winter now, like the early part of winter where they start putting on the beef. And I'll tell you, they're 13, 14 pounds, some of them. Like, they're big, and again, the body of water will dictate that. But I would say the fall is probably your best big fish bite that you can you can muster. Lengthwise, I mean, they're all going to be a certain length, right? It's 29, 30 inches is going to be, 8.5 pounds in the spring, but come fall, 10.2, 10.4, he's going to be over the 10-pound mark easily. So they'll put on 2 or 3 pounds of weight with their feeding and eating. They're building up their fat in their bodies to make it through the winter and feed their eggs and grow their eggs. So that takes a lot of nourishment. So
they go into that hyperphagia mode where they eat just about anything that'll fit in their mouths. And I know, like here on our Wyoming reservoirs, they're eating trout, they're eating emerald shiners, whatever they can get. So typically I have people, it's like, hey, if you know where the emerald shiners are, the trout are going to be there, the walleye are going to be there, the crappie are going to be there. Everybody's going to be there because they're trying to get ready for wintertime. So what's it like up in Canada? Is it's kind of a similar thing? I mean, what are these big walleye eating in the fall?
Most of our lakes hold a lot of Cisco, tulipy, whitefish, that sort of thing. But mostly a Cisco is a tulipy, and then some have a mixture of perch in there too. Really strong patterns of perch, like lots of perch. They'll eat sticklebacks. They'll eat anything. I've seen them eating crayfish. I've caught walleye on Last Mountain Lake with crayfish in their bellies and stuff like that. So they're opportunists. If there's a crayfish, it's too hard on them. That jaw can crush your finger, man. It's going to crush a little crayfish that's 3 inches long. So they will eat them, but the most of the time they're after that tulipy Cisco type of bait. That's what they're shiners, I guess some people call them. Anything that swims, they're going to chase them. So, yeah.
People forget that a walleye can eat something pretty substantial. Like I caught a 19-inch walleye a couple of years ago in the fall. And I brought him home to eat, and I cut him open, and he had a 9-inch rainbow trout in his stomach.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a 19-inch walleye. It's not huge, but it had a 9-inch trout in its stomach, a stalker trout, Yeah. And to your point, in the summertime, we get a really good walleye bite on, your crawdad colored cranks or spoons. And I mean, you'll take a home an 18-incher, and it's got a dozen or more crawfish in its stomach. They don't care. I mean, they're going to eat that.
Yeah, something's moving. What's that? They turn down, boom, and they eat it, type of thing. This is many moons ago. I caught 2 walleye. We caught a half decent limit of walleye. There's 3 of us in the boat, and I said, "Man, these 2 are really fat." I took them home. We're cleaning them, and I cut them open and looked in their belly, and it was full of somebody had cut and cubed up beef, like an animal, the beef. And he cut it up, and a lot of people put mercurial foam on them and use that. They smell, it's bloody, it's got some scent to it. And these 2 walleye, it must have been somebody dumped their leftover from that day into the water, and that walleye, both of them were just packed with these chunks of meat. And this is ridiculous. It looked like stewing meat, for goodness sake. So they will eat whatever There doesn't have to swim. They're going to pick it off the bottom if they're hungry. I've got walleye with grass, moss stuck in their bellies, like it's like full of those things. Must be a vegetarian. It was in the fish's stomach. It doesn't make sense, but there it was. So, yeah.
Yeah. I've had them where they have, like mayfly larvae and other kind of stuff in their stomachs, because they'll eat whatever they can. I mean, they're an opportunistic, hunter. And so I had a friend, he was trying to catch channel catfish, and he was using chicken livers, and he caught these 2 like 4-pound walleye, and he was like, "Man, I didn't think that they would eat that." I was like, "Well, why wouldn't they eat it? I mean, it's food, and I think walleyes kind of get this stigma of that they only eat other fish, but I mean, they eat just about anything and everything.
Yeah. They'll eat little bloodworms, depending on what's in that system too. Some of the lakes and reservoirs and that you'll see, but they're not very big. They're like perch will eat a lot of that too, but they'll eat it. They'll, like you said, that mayfly hatch is a killer on a bite. And some of the lakes, they're just gorging themselves on those. They swim with their mouths open and fill them up, Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's really hard to catch a walleye if there's a hatch going on, and
it can be, for sure.
It's just because of that. I mean, they take what they can get, and even when the emerald shiners are running real heavy, like there's times in our reservoirs where you can almost walk across them, to get across the lake, because there's so many of them in there. But you can just hear the walleye crashing them up against the bank into the trout. You got these massive trout that are coming in and just smashing these things. Well, it's really hard to catch them when they're doing that, because all they have to do is swim real fast with their mouth open, and they're going to get just about everything that they need. So that can make it pretty difficult and maddening because they're right there in front of you and you can't catch them.
Yeah, I see lots of walleye breaking on the surface, and people, oh, that's a tulipy, or maybe the pike that splashed. And a lot of times it's a big walleye. I've watched them come up right by the dock, and what was that? That was a walleye. You see that little white tip taken off, and yeah, I've seen walleye, like, people don't believe me when I tell them I've seen walleye sitting there, not 200, but I bet you there was 100 in a foot and a half of water in a back bay at Diefenbaker. We couldn't get our boat in there. They were stuck in there so tight. There was no water left, and they were and it was sunny out. And I'm going, this doesn't make sense. And when they came rolling out of that, because they spooked eventually, they were banging the side of our boats as they went, and we turned around, went down the coulee draw, and caught fish like crazy. So that's something you got to look at. Keep your eyes and ears open for visual, because that can be key to catching a lot of good fish too. Yeah.
So when the ice comes off, you're going immediately to that back bay, right? Like that's kind of where you're headed. That's where you're going to go.
Yeah.
And, I like the spin a jig a lot. And I found that springtime, you can work it real slow. And I like that little propeller because it kind of gives off that flash. Can you talk about how to use that spin a jig? Because we get a lot of questions about that too. Yeah.
Well, that spin a jig is designed to, again, that little blade on the top, and it's in 3 different colors. It triggers, it's the vibration the fish is. Was it 2 years ago? I think I caught a 31 on it, just pitching the jig. And my son was using it. I said, okay, we're going to try these now. We're different things where, you always try different stuff. If you're going to say you're going to use just the PK lure, you should be trying other stuff too, because it may not work at that given time. But I told my son, I said, we got these new ones here and we're going to give them a shot. He goes, oh, that's kind of cool. Let's put it on there. And I said, are you snagged? He goes, no, it's a fish. I said, oh, okay. And I get the net and net this really big fish, probably a 7 or 8 pounder. And I said, wow, maybe Dad should tie one on. So I put one on, pitched it out there, and it wasn't, tap, boom. What was this? And I'm fighting this fish. And holy smokes. And it was like 31 inches, like about a spawned out female, but just a beautiful fish. And we just tip it with because we don't have live bait here. Usually a minnow. I will sometimes slide a piece of like Berkeley Power, grub or something like that on there, so that it doesn't slide back and forth. But I'll just or thread through the mouth and the back out, and then into the side of the minnow, so that when that fish comes to grab the spinach jig, he's getting a good chunk of it, and he's getting the hook as well. He's not biting and pulling the basically. I have some here. He's not pulling the minnow off your hook, and I'll put a leech on it too. That works really well. And I'll thread a crawler on it too. Just slide it through the nose of the crawler and then out the side, just so you get a little bit of a tail left on it, and it kind of vibrates. But don't make it so big that, again, they're going to grab half of it and they don't get the hook, and they just take half of your bait, and he's gone, right? So that would be the key, just to, through the gills and into the side on a frozen minnow, or if you can use live minnows, use those. We can't do that in Saskatchewan, but Manitoba you can. And I know guys that fish a lot, Lake Winnipeg and that, and they do really well on that spinach jig. So up at some of the tournaments and that, so they've done well with that.
Yeah, and if you're fishing down here for like trout, I use that like 3-inch power minnow, Berkeley Power Minnow, or Gulp. Yeah, and those work great. Yep.
Yeah. Anything that's got a little bit of scent and vibration, and add it to that little spinner on the top, and that I've caught a lot of fish, and like the ones you don't want to catch, if you want to say that, but pike. Where, if you didn't have that little extra spinner, because it's made out of steel and it bangs and makes noise as it spins too and clanks, they'd be gone, because it would cut it right off. So it actually adds a little bit of a, about a 2-inch leader as well. So that helps too.
Yeah, so it's like a little piece of steel is what he's talking about. And then the spinner kind of runs up along that. In fact, I've got one here. So for the people who are watching online, you can see this. Yeah, see, we both got them. We know what we're talking about.
That little piece there, just and there's different colored blades on it, and that's solid metal, and it gives you that extra, 1.5 inches, almost 2 inches of safety when you're catching pike and you're ripping through a lot of fish as well. So yeah, and that vibration, that lateral line on a walleye, it senses something's going on. What's that? And boom. A regular jig just working real slow on the bottom can work when it's finessing, but a lot of times people over finesse, if there's such a word, where they're going after, just got to do it this way. And you get some guy out there, some kid that got a Snoopy rod and he's casting out, reeling it as fast as he can. And I've got a story about that one. I mean, he didn't, this young lad didn't even know how to fish, and you couldn't, slow down, and he wouldn't. And boom, boom, these fish were grabbing it. I said, okay, keep doing it then. Like you just let the fish decide, what they want, and change. Just keep changing and changing. And then when you hit that holy grail, like I always say, it's like night and day. We've had, times out on the water where ice fishing here several times where we couldn't get bit, and we put a flyer fish down. It was the big one, like half ounce, red dot glow. And my buddy Arden said, "Ah, man, they're just coming in. They won't do nothing. I'm going to try this flutterfish. That's too big." Put it on there. Boom, boom. Oh, okay, hang on. Everybody switches, and we absolutely lights out. And before that, we were trying to convince this fish that he should maybe bite it. He gave him too much time to see it, and now they just wanted their reactionary bite. Boom, and they were eating it. So it was amazing, actually. And we've done that many times. Let the fish dictate what they want. Like if he's not biting, change the color, change the design, and that's the beauty of PK. We've got so many different styles and designs and colors, and we're getting bigger. And then we got a good summer lineup as well with the PK disc and the wobblers and whatnot. And as the Vortex, Junior Vortex is really good too.
Yeah,
that all works. Yeah,
I want to talk about this guy for a second. So this
this is getting kind of uncanny,
we have the same one.
Yeah.
So this PK Ridgeline next gen crankbait. Yeah. So this one I'm holding up for those of you who can't see. This is a crawfish killer. Yeah. These things, you can hear the rattle really well, but they are absolutely dynamite. I have a buddy. He's now pretty much exclusively a trolling fisherman. He's getting up into his 80s, and he likes those Berkeley flicker shad. And I was like, well, you ought to try this, PK crankbait and see what you think of it. So I hooked him up with a rainbow colored one, and it was in June, and the fish are suspended, right? So there's lots of bait kind of out in the middle. So you're fishing 60, 70 feet of water, and the walleye and the trout are all in about 15, 20 feet of water, and they're just chasing this bait, as it moves through the reservoir. And he sent me a picture the next day, and it was walleye after walleye after walleye on that rainbow colored, PK Ridgeline. Mm-hmm. And we did the same thing again this fall, right before it iced up. It was freezing cold. We were fishing, and we had multiple of the Berkeley flicker shad. We had 2 on one side of the boat, and then we had the PKs on the other. And we didn't catch a fish on anything except for that PK Ridgeline, which was pretty awesome. And it was that rainbow color. So those things can be really deadly for the walleyes too.
When we talk about, again, redefined, PK goes that extra little step and put that on the back of the hooks. And little things like that, like guys have always asked me, how come you caught a bigger fish than me? Or how come you, and then I'll ask the same question, why did you beat me when they caught a bigger fish? And I'll look at their lure and I say, oh, you put that on there. Oh, you've done that. Oh, you put some fish scent on. Sometimes it's the littlest thing out there that can trigger that big fish to bite and or a fish to bite. If you don't tweak it and play around, I find it enjoyable actually to play with the lures and adapt to them. Some guys will take a Sharpie and put a little bit of a gill plate on it, or a couple little colors or some dots on it. Hey, you're having fun, do that too, because it can make a big difference. Color, whatever the scheme of it, or add on a different type of hook, add on, anything different is good, because everybody's doing the same thing. When you go through a group of boats, that's been one of my, I want to say it, I might as well. One of my tricks is a lot of times what I've got down there isn't what the rest of the group has. Even my own partner shakes his head at me sometimes when I fish in tournaments, and he doesn't shake his head too hard because he needs to get in the net. And it can be just something as simple as a little sequence or a color of a bead, something just a little bit smaller that he's not using, and I just change it. I trigger the fish, whether it's a smaller. Again, the other day there it was I fished Lake Manitoba, actually Lake Winnipeg, and we changed down to 1/8 ounce with our minnows and that was the ticket. They wanted something smaller. They didn't want the great big large, movement and whatnot. So we got to do with the fish again, say it again, let them just let them tell you what they want. Yeah,
So piggybacking on that, if you're jigging for a walleye and you're watching them on your Vexilar or your Garmin or whatever you're using,
right.
what are you looking for, and how do you change that cadence? Because I know that you had a video a long time ago when I was working for PK, and you were showing how to use the PK spoon, where you kind of pounded the bottom, stirred up the sediment, and you
Right.
kind of lift the lure up into that and just kind of work it there. And then
Right.
sure enough, you got bit. But can you kind of talk about some of the best practices of how to trigger those actual strikes on your lure?
Right. Right. And that's one of them. A lot of times it's a cadence that you don't want to, I call it the yo-yo. You up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. You got to give a pause in between for that fish to actually strike. So again, you're watching your flasher and or your Garmin or whatever you're running, and live scope. There's so many of them there, and those are all great. Those are the thing to have. But at the end of the day, whatever you're using, when that fish comes in and he leaves right away or spooks off really, you'll watch him. The fish will come in real slow. You get, your flash will start lighting up, and then all of a sudden he's gone. Well, where'd he go? How come? Why did he leave so fast? That's the trigger to me to say, okay, next time I see one come in, I'm going to start. I'll hit the bottom, I pull up, and then my cadence will pretty much right in half. Like if I was ripping it pretty quick and hard, tap, tap, rip, maybe a foot up. Now all of a sudden I'm down to just a little jiggle and a wiggle and not very much, because you're going to want to have that fish stay interested and not spook them away. And a lot of times that's what people do, is they end up scaring the fish away and not convincing them to stick around a little bit longer to turn and then finally eat it. And I think that's a mistake a lot of anglers make, is they stay in the same thing, tap, tap, rip, and they just keep doing the same thing. Well, here's the fish now. Slow right down. I cut everything in half pretty much. And then even after that, I'll hold it so still that you don't even want to breathe, and that fish will come up and dunk. I've got many cases out there where I've been sitting there just half asleep. Oh, what's that? And you're holding it. Here he comes up. Boom. And before that, even if you just gave it a little jiggle at all, they wouldn't even look at it. Drove you nuts, but you figured out what they wanted. And that's the key. Sometimes they want it ripped really hard in the dirt, up, down, boom, boom, stop for that split second. Again, the pause is the trigger, boom, and they hit it. Sometimes the pause is the pause, and you don't do anything else but hold it steady. They call it dead sticking, right? A lot of times you get a lot of big fish caught when you dead stick a line, even on a dead minnow. A live minnow, of course, that's obvious, they'll swallow it, but at times there's no movement at all.
It's funny how fish will do that to you, because like up here with our trout, you'll have that where the trout will be super aggressive for like 30 minutes. And then it's like they just quit, and they like that dead stick. So you have a dead stick next to you, and you're working a spoon or whatever. And then all of a sudden your dead stick's like, they grab it, and it's like, man, what is going on with these fish? But it's interesting, and you have to play with, what you're presented, and you have to play the cards that you get. So, sure. What are some other, just before we wrap up here, what are just some other thoughts as far as, things every angler should know when they're going after walleye? What are some keys, some takeaways that you've learned from other great anglers over the years?
I think the biggest thing, there's so many good anglers out there, but there's one thing that each and every one of these anglers that get to the point of being, considered a good angler, or even a great angler, that's a lot of them out there, is they never stop learning. They advance their knowledge in everything, whether it's electronics or the type of tackle, the rods, reels, line, and they're always looking for that, that a little bit better edge. Bass fishermen do it all the time. Educate yourself extremely well whenever you're going out on a body of water to know where you're fishing. Okay, this is Lake X. Well, you better know everything about Lake X before you even put the boat in the water. No sense learning it after the fact that, Lake X doesn't even have walleye in it. Like as silly as that might sound, you got to know what you're after and how they catch the fish on that body of water. Contact your education. Contact your local tackle shop. If there's a guide out there that you want to hire to take you out for the first day or two, just to educate you, safety number one, and what are you after, and how they how they bite, because every single lake will have some sort of little twist to it that fish just like something better than the next thing. And it seems to be the ticket is you just take your time and educate yourself before you get on, and be prepared before you even hit the water. Proper bait, everything's got to be just lined up. If you go to I tournament fish, so if I go to a tournament and I forget my bait, I might as well go home type of thing. It's the same thing with anything else. Take everything that, my tackle bags are so heavy, guys hate fishing with me because they, well, what do you got all this stuff for? This is ridiculous. So, yeah, but the day that I need to dig in that tackle bag and get a jig of some sort or whatever it might be, it's in there. And I have a story here a couple of years ago. The guy said, "Oh man, we pounded him on this, but you can't get him anymore." "What do you got?" Shows me. "Oh yeah, digged in I pull in my tackle bag," and he couldn't believe it. I had 6 of them. He goes, "That's impossible." I said, "No, it's not." I got like too many. I don't want to say how many tackle bags I got. But yeah, and it's versatility. That's key. Just and education. Just keep yourself in tune with what's going on, and you'll become a better angler. I've been doing this 50 years, and I can learn from a 10-year-old what he's done. What did he do? Wow. He was just leaving it sit on the bottom and eating his sandwich, and the walleye picked it off the bottom. Dropped my bait down there, boom. Walleye started eating it off the bottom. It makes no sense. Again, let the fish tell you what to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, I tell everybody the minute that I think I've kind of learned something about walleye, I learn something else, because
right.
they just keep teaching you over time, because they go where the food is. They're not strapped to the constraints that we think they are.
No. Last trip out there at Lake Winnipeg, we were fishing 16-ish feet of water, and there was fish in 6 feet under the surface and right on the bottom. And we targeted every one of those fish with our sonars because we could see them, so each fish that came in, we, whether we caught them or not, at least we could play the game and watch them and try and trigger that fish. So, and we had a good trip.
So here's one of the things I ask everybody that comes on the show: if you're going to eat a walleye, how are you going to prepare that thing?
I used to do a lot of deep frying, so kind of got away from that. But I keep it really simple. I just use a pancake batter or a pancake flour, and it really doesn't matter what type, as long as it's like just a pancake flour, because pancake flour, like regular flour, will burn really easy. Pancake flour is designed to brown up, and I just, a moist salt and pepper on it, and then I just roll it in the pancake flour. And again, it's got to be moist so it adheres to it. And I fry it in butter, really slow, medium heat type thing. And I want to taste the fish. I don't want to not taste the fish. I like, walleye really doesn't have a taste, but I like that, the non-taste, and not playing around and trying to put, some people put Cajun on and stuff like that. I'll do that the odd time. I just like the basic, and deep fry some French fries, and I'm good to go. It's simple. Keep it simple.
I like that.
That's all I do. So
one of the things that I've started doing is I like to use, one of our sponsors is High Mountain Seasonings, and they have this Cowboy Cajun seasoning.
Yeah.
And it's great for fish tacos. So like if you take the walleye and you just kind of sprinkle it on about a half hour before you start to cook, and then heat up some butter, like you said, on like a medium heat.
Yeah.
And then just brown it on both sides really good, and throw it in a taco with some slaw. That's pretty darn good.
Here's that. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's what you want. So,
well, I can say that this is a podcast I've wanted to do for a long time. So Tim, I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. And guys, if you want to get some of these lures that we've been talking about this whole show, the best place to go is pklure.com, or you can go to your local bait shop. They've probably got them. I mean, there's pretty good distribution of PKs now. If they don't have what you're looking for, tell the guy who orders the fishing tackle, would be like, "Hey, I'd love it if you brought in some ridge rattlers or some rattle spoons, or, maybe they don't have PK spoons or flutterfish," which would make me just mind blown if they don't have that by now. But you can get them either way. And then if you do go to pklure.com, use PK Pro at checkout, you get a little bit of a discount, and go out and try them. They work great.
Yeah. And if there's any questions somebody has about the product, or what we use, and PK Lures right on our Facebook page and the website. You can ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask anything, or even you see me on there. I'll post something on Facebook. Just ask the question, send a message, boom, I'll respond to it. I got no problem giving guys the information that they need. It's the way we all learn, and we want to get better at it and grow the sport even more than it is already, and conserve it too, though. So that comes hand in hand. I got to tell you, there's a hot bite on this lake, or but use your head when you're out there too, and take just a few fish, and it works for everybody then. So,
yeah, take lots of pictures.
Lots of pictures. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with even fish that are 3 pounds. That makes a good picture, especially when you're out there with your kids and catching fish. I mean, that's what it's all about. So,
yep.
But appreciate it too, having me on and chatting. I'll always like to talk about fishing. I don't know, I've been doing it too many years, maybe. I still like it.
Yeah. Well, it is fun to talk about. I mean, you and I both absolutely love to go fishing. We love big walleyes. So I knew this would be a fun episode. And I'm sure people will pick up some great information from this. And so, yeah, go use the information, make yourself a better angler. And again, just stay humble and, keep learning, because the fish are going to teach you.
Yep. Exactly.